Well, sure. Well, Sue, thank you so much for having me here today. So, I grew up on the East Coast in New York City area and went to school in Boston and got recruited by Ford Motor Company to come to the Dearborn, Detroit area. Never been here before. So, came to Michigan and spent a couple of years at Ford, went to Chicago for my MBA, and then came back and had my career at Chrysler. So I worked at Chrysler in the finance office. I was like a divisional controller for almost 30 years. And then in 2010, I retired.
Incredible. And then your new life begins.
Right.
Because now you get to do what you're passionate about. So how did you get interested in K-12 education?
Well, so as I said, I retired and didn't exactly know what I was going to be doing. But in the I'm from the Bloomfield Township, Bloomfield Hills School District area. And all the school districts in the state and also in Oakland County have unfortunately been shrinking over the last 20, 30, 40 years as people have fewer children and unfortunately as people are moving out of the state. So our school district had all of its infrastructure built in the 1950s and 1960s. So all the buildings were all built then. So we had originally had, back in the 1950s, about 850 kids. By 1969, we had 10,000. So we had grown about tenfold in about 20 years as people were moving, unfortunately, out of the city of Detroit into the suburbs. So we had capacity for 10,000 kids. By the 1990s or so, we had about 5,000 kids. So we had way too much building for the number of kids. So there was a lot of discussion going on in the district, starting about 2002 or so, to consolidate our high schools, go from 2 high schools to 1 high school. And this went on for about 10 years, that they were negotiating with the community, taking bond issues to the community, and community would vote them down. And what I would say is that the first bond issue, the community said no, and then a couple of years later, the school district went back to the community, and the community said, hell no. And this went on, as I said, for 10 years. So in 2011 and 12, we had a new superintendent, and I bumped into him one day in a parking lot and said, Mr. Glass, you don't know me and I don't know you, but I don't know whether we should have 2 high schools or 1 high school, but all I know is we shouldn't be debating it and yelling and screaming at each other for a decade over this. So he put me on some committees, and about the next year I saw what was going on in the school district and decided to actually run and got elected in 2012. So I was on the school board in Bloomfield Hills from 2013 through 2022.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you were like intimately involved in collaborating.
Sure. So when I was there, I got very interested not only in what was happening in the school district in Bloomfield, and we have about 800 school districts in this state. So most school board members really focus on their school district, but I started looking at how things were going on in the entire state. Yeah. So not just the 5,000 kids that are in our school district, but the 1.4 million children in the whole state. So I started getting very involved in education policy in Lansing and even a little bit in Washington, D.C.
That's amazing. I'm glad you did, because your vision just spoke, right? It just expanded, and then you can bring those kinds of insights to individual school districts or...
So unfortunately, what I saw is that we in Michigan have not been doing very well in our education system for many, many years.
So what do you think some of the problems, can you be more specific about what some of the problems were?
Sure. Okay.
I'm sorry.
We have some technical things going on here.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll just be
It's off. Yep. Thank you. That's great.
we-
Yeah. So we
Are we
just.
live?
Yeah, we're fine.
Okay, very
We're
good.
fine. Just had to hit a button. I wouldn't know which one to hit, so I need them to come and tell me, right?
So we have
yeah.
a lot of problems in our education system. We used to have a very good education system in the state,
Mm-hmm.
but over the last 30, 40 years, it's been declining significantly over the years. So I've got some statistics here.
Sure.
We are 41st in fourth grade reading in the state versus the other states, with about 28% of our students being proficient in reading, only 28%. And when you really break that and what it's called disaggregated, breaking down into different groups of students,
Yeah.
like African American or Black students, only 10% of them are proficient in reading.
Oh
in
my
fourth
goodness!
grade. We're 24th in eighth grade math around the country. There are some studies that are done that say we're 42nd overall in education. If you look
my
at all the
goodness.
grades and all the different subject matters, our graduation rate is only 40th. Out of 50 states.
Isn't that incredible?
And not only that, which is kind of looking at aggregate, but if you look at what are called achievement gaps or opportunity gaps, the difference between different demographic groups, there are huge gaps when you look at economically disadvantaged children
Okay.
or African American children, Latino children, children with special needs. Children who are English language learners, that English is not their first language.
That's true.
There are huge differences, 30, 40% differences between the students that are, the largest percentage of students and these students that are really, very disadvantaged and really need to have our attention.
They deserve so much more,
Mm-hmm.
don't they, than what they unfortunately have access to. How does these findings impact all of us in Michigan?
Well, in a number of different ways. Not only obviously does it affect the children themselves,
Absolutely.
as they're, as they graduate or, have limitations because they have to
Right.
have, remedial classes if they're going to, a four-year college or community college. Matter of fact, the governor is looking at that. If you look at children outside of, or not children, but as people graduate at age 18, most states have children or adults who have some sort of post-secondary credential, either four-year degree, two-year degree,
Right.
Some sort of certificate.
Right.
We were only at about 40% of all of our adults had any sort of certificate.
Oh my goodness.
We are no longer in the days that you used to be able to go with a high school diploma or being a high school dropout
Right.
and go work on the assembly line.
Right. Like
So you need some sort of additional education. And unfortunately, our K-12 education system is really not preparing children for those kind of future life opportunities. So not only is it for the children,
themselves,
but
yeah.
also business are for economic development in this state. Business needs talent, needs talented people.
Yes,
And
very
we
much
are not
so.
providing those type of talented people to the businesses, not only for the children who are matriculating out of our K-12 system, but if you've got, with the quality of education, which is so substandard in this state,
Yeah.
if you are a 30-something or 40-something and you live in Atlanta or Denver or Chicago, and you're a 30 or 40-something and you have a 6 or an 8-year-old child, and you got a job offer from Michigan company, I mean, what's the first thing you ask when you're looking at talk to a real estate agent? What's the first thing you always ask?
How are the schools?
Exactly. So trying to attract talent from
I see.
not adult talent from other states to come with their children, it's a disincentive for people. Our population as a state has been stagnant for decades. We're about 10,000 people in the state. Other states are growing their population, and our state has been flatlined for so many years.
Wow.
So one of the things that the governor did a few years ago, or last year was now we're in 2025, so in 2023,
Yeah.
she set up a commission calling the Growing Michigan Together Council. saying how do we grow our population by 2050?
Oh my goodness.
So it's a long-term process that's
Yes.
over a 20, 30-year period of time.
That's incredible.
One of the major pillars of that council was K-12.
Mm-hmm.
Because between business and infrastructure and colleges and universities and K-12, those are the major components of what makes up a state. And our K-12 system has not really kept up with any of the other, many, if not most of the other states in the country. So we really need to focus on how do we, what have we done wrong, and what should we do to really improve that? I mean, it takes a long time. I mean, a child is in school 13 years. So anything you do now is going to take a long time to actually show. If you start a child at pre-K, you're not going to see them actually affecting the graduation rate for 13, 14 years from now.
Oh my goodness, that's
so
such
it's a very long cycle
horizon.
process.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things we really have been doing and really need to be doing.
So, and ever since like COVID in 2020, I think you and I were talking about how things kind of changed a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some things changed in many years and other things maybe changed since 2020. But, whichever one you want to talk about, it's still a lot of change and it's continuing to change, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the past, how have we addressed some of the problems over the last 30 years?
You brought COVID up. I mean, we've been having problems in our education system way before COVID. COVID, just added insult to injury. Unfortunately, it made it even more pronounced. But we've been having problems way before that. Over the last 30 years or so, we've done a lot of things. Governor Engler in the 1990s introduced what are called schools of choice.
Okay.
So allowing parents, if the school district has capacity, allowing parents to basically choose which school district their child goes to.
Okay.
So they weren't just limited to geography
and
where they happen to live, but they could go to neighboring districts if the neighboring districts had the capacity and the ability to accommodate them, they could go district to district.
That's amazing.
That's great. They don't provide transportation and buses between the different districts, but if you're able to get the child from A to B, they can go to different districts. We have charter schools.
What is a charter school?
Well, charter school is a public school, but it's not geographically bound.
Oh, okay.
So before 1994, we had about 530 school districts, which are the geographic districts that you have your elected school board for all over the state.
Right.
But then in the 1990s, we added this concept of charter schools, which a charter school is a public school, but is not geographically bound. So wherever the charter school is, parents can send their children from really anywhere as long as they can get them from home to the school.
Oh, wow.
They can go to that charter school. The way the capacity, so if they handle, let's say, 200 children in the charter school, and if 300 parents apply for their kids, there's a lottery.
Okay.
So
oh my goodness.
There's no, unlike if you're in a local school district, if you live in that school district, you will go to, you have the opportunity to go to the school district.
You don't have to worry about.
They won't, the school district can't say, no, you can't come into our school district.
Right.
But in a charter school, they only have so many spaces, so there's a lottery.
My goodness.
But the rules very often are a little different. We're not going to go into a lot of details on charter schools right now, but they have some different rules than like the traditional school districts. So we have charter schools and we have about 300 charter schools in the state.
Oh, I didn't know there were that many.
So that took us from 500 local districts plus 300. We have around 800 school districts in the state.
Wow.
We have also virtual schools that we've opened up so that you don't actually have to have a physical building.
That's amazing.
You can run the whole school, have your student stay at home and either take individual classes or, for the entire school day, they're just sitting at home in front of a computer.
Incredible.
That's a possibility. We've increased preschool opportunities over the years.
Good.
Where we, over the last 4 or 5 years really have been expanding it significantly, where we're moving towards what is called universal pre-K.
Okay.
So that you can, if you've got a 4-year-old and eventually maybe even a 3-year-old,
even 3,
you
yeah.
can send your child to preschool within a school district, and it doesn't cost you anything.
That's amazing because some of them are ready, right?
Yep. Well, one of the things with preschool is the greatest
Like predictor.
enabler to K-12 success.
Wow. The
So
biggest
really
is
getting a student or getting a child into a high quality preschool early really will help not only encourage but not guarantee, but will help that student really be successful
Right.
by the time they graduate.
That's a big difference.
We a few years ago had a real push on third grade reading,
Okay.
where trying to give students and teachers greater opportunity from kindergarten through third grade, so that by the time they get to third grade, they're able to read.
Very good.
One of the things you hear is from K to 3, you learn to read, and from 4th beyond, you read to learn.
Oh, I like that.
So,
Yep.
but many students weren't able to read.
No.
So we had a few years ago something called, not only did we put additional resources
Yeah.
into the school districts around the state, but we had something kind of punitive, saying if you didn't pass a third grade reading test
Like an
called
evaluation.
the M-STEP test,
Okay.
you were going to be retained.
Wow.
You were going to be held back, and you wouldn't be able to go to 4th grade.
So that's a really big.
But that changed the last year, or in 2023. That was put in place in 2017 or 18.
Okay.
That got repealed by the state legislature, so that we have all the tools that have been given, but we don't. We've left the carrots, but we've taken away the stick.
Yeah.
So we don't have the third grade retention anymore. But one thing that did happen over the last 6 months is that the state just passed for we have a number of students, about 20% of the students have dyslexia.
Okay. 20%.
And have a difficulty reading, and also students who don't have dyslexia but still have difficulty reading.
Right.
A lot of the curriculum that we're using has really not been very effective.
Okay.
Each school district, each one of the 800 school districts, had the choice in terms of which reading curriculum they could use.
Okay.
And the state said, well, some of them are good, but some of them really aren't really based in science.
Okay.
So what we as the legislature and the governor recommended, also by the Michigan Department of Education, the state school board, is saying between now and 2027, we are going to have only the certain reading curriculum that are based on science you're authorized to use in the school district.
Okay.
So that will be phased in over the next 3 or 4 years, so that it's not going to tell the individual school districts which curriculum they must use, but they're going to, Michigan Department of Education is going to give them a list of a few different school curriculum that
Right.
they can choose from,
That are
as
scientifically
opposed to
proven.
having salespeople come in
Yeah, exactly.
and sell
Exactly.
50,000, 100,000 worth of textbooks and material that is not really effective.
Yeah, and effective is the key word, isn't it?
We've done other things, such as we've increased funding, which is very significant.
That's
We've
helpful.
given additional funding, not only in the base funding, but in students, as I said, that are at risk and require special education services.
Okay.
So we've
That's
done
helpful.
reforms to the pension fund and the way teachers' pension is handled. So we've done a lot of these things over the last number of years.
Yeah.
Many of them have been very effective and very helpful. The problem is that we keep declining. After all these
After
things that we've
all
done
of
over the last
this.
30 years that I just listed, we still are not doing very well. So
And
what's
there's-
wrong with this picture?
What is going on? Because those are a lot of really fundamental changes, right? And the science would back up okay, this is effective, and we're going to take seriously what the numbers were, and you're hoping they're going to get better. It's so disappointing. if you're still seeing the same progression after all of that effort and thinking and collaboration. Is there anything that we haven't tried that you can think of?
Well, one thing, again, as I said, I come from the business world.
Yes.
And while school it's a not-for-profit business or a governmental or a business.
Okay.
And many teachers don't like to be had education referred to as a business, saying that we're not turning out widgets, and they're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
But as you know, been involved in a number of nonprofit organizations, and while education is not a for-profit business, it is a mission-driven business. We're in the mission of not making money,
Yeah.
but to educate children.
That's right.
We spend, I mentioned to you earlier, over $22 billion, even $23 billion in the state. It's the largest line item in the state budget.
I had no idea.
We have, in my school district, we had about 1,000 employees, or statewide. We have, I think, 100,000 teachers and another 100,000 support staff.
Oh my goodness.
So it's, in many areas, it's the largest employer in the community.
Right.
So
And some counties, you're saying, right? Some counties, that's the biggest employer.
absolutely.
It's incredible.
So we have this large organization where we have the state, we have 50 county organizations called ISDs,
Okay.
intermediate school districts. We have, as I said, 50 local school districts, 800 or 300 charters. It's a large structure. If we had to map it all out, it would take us a long time to kind of
Yes, it
map out all
would.
the different pieces that are there.
It's
The problem
extraordinary.
is we really don't have a good strategic plan.
surprising.
We really don't have a vision, a good vision as to where do we want to be 10, 20 years from now.
Right.
I was mentioning that Governor Whitmer, back when she was elected in her first State of the State, talked about this thing that I talked about with the post-secondary adults, where we're about 40% of our adults have some sort of certificate. She set a target saying by
Right.
2030 we want to have 60% of our
Of
adults
adults.
having some sort of post-secondary certificate or degree of some sort, not just a high school diploma. So we were at 40%, and she wanted us to get to 60%, so about a 50% increase. That's a
Wow,
lot.
that's a lot.
So this is by 2030. So that was a goal that we had, starting in 2019 through over 2030, so 11 years, and we are now at, I think, 50%. So that's the kind of plan we need to say
Okay.
we need to have a goal,
Right.
some sort of North Star that we're
Right.
shooting for,
I like
and
that.
then start putting in processes, figure out why we're not there yet, and figure out what we need to do. So the state in 2000 and before 2015, the state really didn't have any strategic plan whatsoever.
Oh my goodness.
We have since then had 2 new state superintendents, and with the state school board, they have developed what's called the Top 10 plan.
Okay.
And here, I've got a copy of it, if you can put this on the camera.
There it
we go.
is. Yeah,
This is
right.
the, let me just straighten it up.
Top 10.
It's the
strategic
top
education.
10 strategic plan.
Okay.
So this is a good start. The problem is what you're seeing here,
Yeah. Guiding principles.
that's it.
Oh.
That is the entire plan. That one
What?
side of one sheet of paper.
What?
And if you go on the State Board of Education and the Michigan Department of Education's website, you can pull this sheet up yourself. That's the entire plan.
That's shocking.
Other states have books and books and
Wow.
detail of when you've got this large a complex organization, how in the world can you run this with one little sheet of paper?
That's crazy. Like 2/3 of it even has writing on it, and
Right.
part of it is logo. I can't believe how that's shocking, just incredible. So that's what
So-
they are using.
So, coming from the business world, if a corporation like General Motors or Ford or Stellantis tried to run their entire organization
On
with
the-
one basically half a sheet of paper,
Yeah.
there's no way that that could work. So one of the things that I've been working on is trying to say, hey, State Board of Education and Michigan Department of Education, you need to make a more robust strategic plan that everyone in the state, because not only do we have 800 school districts, but each school district has a school board.
Oh,
And school boards are,
Wow.
the local school boards are elected officials, and there are 7 of them in every school board. So you've got 5,000
Wow.
school board members.
Yes.
And then you've got charter school board members that are not elected, they're appointed.
Okay.
And then you have ISD school boards. So you've got a whole bunch of people.
so many
And
people.
if trying to herd the cats and trying to get them all literally on the same page, but we only have like one page.
Yeah.
This is no way that they have an understanding, and not only so you got school board members that are elected or appointed,
Right.
but then you have superintendents that are in charge of actually the operation of the school district, and
Right.
we have 800 of them. They don't have any roadmap. They don't have any way of knowing where do we want to be in 2035? Where do we want to be in 2040? What just like what I said, 60 by 30, which is what Governor Whitmer did for post-secondary. The way our Constitution is written in this state, it's not the governor's responsibility. It's not the legislature's responsibility. The way our Constitution is written, it is the State Board of Education
Okay.
and the Michigan Department of Education, their responsibility of giving what's called planning, coordination, and supervision, provide leadership
Provide
in
leadership.
all education.
Right.
It's their responsibility, but not the governor, not the legislature. And the legislature and the governor provide the funding,
Right.
which is absolutely critical.
Right. I agree. Yeah.
But what are we spending the money on? What's the goal? Where are we going? What's the objective? Where do we want to be in 5, 10, 20 years from now, so that everyone in the state sort of has a vision, a goal and a vision in terms of, okay, this is where we want to be. This is where my school district is on
Right.
these metrics.
Right.
And what do we need to do to kind of move from where we are as our local school district
Right.
to where we want to be? They're really not given any direction.
That's
So
just
is any surprise that we don't do very well? What I've said to people is, there's an old line that says, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
that's so true.
But my version is, if you don't know where you're going, no road will take you there.
Because you just don't
You
know.
just don't know.
Yeah, exactly. You're right.
So we have this very large, complex organization,
Mm-hmm.
and really no direction. So that the
Incredible.
Governor Whitmer's did set up, as I said, this Growing Michigan Together Council, and in 2023 they came out with some recommendations, and one of the recommendations is, and I'll read it,
Okay.
developing a broadly shared state vision, goals, and strategies for Michigan schools through an inclusive process with input from educators, parents, businesses, community members, and students.
Okay.
So to have a broadly shared state vision,
Vision
and goals
and
and
goals.
strategies.
Yeah, that is what's needed, right?
You need a vision.
Vision and
You need then specific goals. And then under the goals, you need what are strategies. How are we going to do that?
exactly.
What are the things we need to do to make it all happen?
Right.
We really don't have any of that.
It's incredible, isn't it?
So that's sort of, we've done all these things over the last 30 years where we've, based on the legislature and the governor saying, well, we need to do this or we need to do that, but really with no overarching structure in
Right.
terms of, what could we be doing and should we be doing based upon benchmarking, also looking
Right.
at other states
Yes.
and other countries.
Because we're not
to
the
say,
only ones that.
what have they done
Right. What's
and
working?
what's worked,
Right. Exactly.
and therefore what have we done and what do we need to do? So those are on the strategies, but the first thing is really saying, what do we want to be when we grow up?
That's
where
true.
Where do we want to be as a state 10, 20 years from now? And unfortunately, if you look at the state strategic plan, it really doesn't tell us.
So many people involved, right? So many organizations. Everybody has, opinions, and many of them, have experience like yourself in education. And so they'd be able to, collaborate. But it's just to get one vision, one set of goals,
Yep.
and then common strategies that people all agree on because they can
Well,
come from different angles, right?
you won't necessarily all get agreement, as we know.
Yeah.
But we do have a political system, so we do. The State Board of Education is the top organization providing leadership, as I said, in the state on education, and there are 8 people on the State Board of Education.
Okay.
So as long as 5 people, hopefully 6, 7, or 8 people, but as long as you get 5 people, they are the people responsible for setting that
Okay.
strategic plan.
Okay. So is there some kind of a gathering every year? Like I think Dr. Glass went to I remember, the Grand Mackinac Hotel.
Uh-huh.
There was some kind of a
Well, there's a
conference.
Mackinac conference every year that's done
Okay.
by the Detroit Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
Detroit, mhm.
So that's just Detroit. So it's just
Well,
like
but it's really trying to, well, that's just a conference. But
Okay.
really, it's our elected officials, whether the State Board of Education. I mean, the elected official, you got State Board of Education, the governor, state legislature,
Right.
and then 800 school districts each have their own elected officials. So they obviously need to get some buy-in from the different, the business community and
Right.
the community, the educators and the people actually in the school districts.
Right.
But
Teachers.
really, and teachers definitely.
Right.
But they are the elected officials. They are the ones who are the decision makers because, we
They're-
as the people vote for them, and they're there to make the decisions for us.
So, like just in an average board of education, in a district, like, do sometimes teachers go for those positions? Is it usually like, 'cause, I mean, it's really great to have business sense and to understand planning and strategy. So, does it ever happen like a teacher would want to be?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The only thing is you can't be an employee of the school district and be on the school board.
Okay.
You can be
Like-
on a school board of your neighboring school district,
Oh, okay.
but you can't be actually on the school board of the
Where
whether you're
you're-
a teacher or a principal or a bus driver,
Right.
because it's a conflict of interest. So the school board
Right.
sets the budget and negotiates and approves the contracts.
Right.
For
Yeah.
the
So they're
employees. So there's a little bit of a conflict of interest. But
Yeah.
no, very definitely, you want people that are retired teachers
right.
or teachers from other school districts, whether
Exactly.
on the local school districts or also on the State Board of Education.
So that's amazing. So, Len, what do you think? Like, I know you're so involved. You've given so much of your life to improving things. What do you see as your role going forward in improving things and making things better? Do you have any ideas about what you'd like to do in the near future?
Well, as I said, you have the State Board of Education, and one of the interesting things is for the last 20 plus years, no one on the State Board of Education has been on a local school board.
That's unusual.
Yes, it is. But that's not just like being on a local school board, the only criteria is you're 18 years of age or older, you're a voter, and you get elected.
Oh my goodness.
And you can be on the local school board or on the state school board. Hopefully, you come in with a little bit more experience, but you don't need that. Sometimes on local school boards, some kids graduate and run, and they're 18, 19-year-olds on school board.
Oh my goodness.
But on the State Board of Education, for many years, the way the process is, and it's kind of a complicated process to actually be on the ballot.
Okay.
It's elected. We all vote for the people on the State Board of Education.
Okay.
In our every 2 years.
Every
There-
2 years.
There are
Okay.
8 people on it.
Okay.
It's an 8-year term.
Oh wow.
So every 2 years, 2 people are up for election.
Right.
So it's staggered.
right.
And one of the interesting things is that there is no primary. There are no signatures to gather. The way our Constitution is written, it's up to each political party. So every 2 years, The Democrats put up 2 candidates for those 2 slots, and the Republicans put up 2 people for those 2 slots.
Interesting.
There are also libertarians and other types of other parties, but the majority of the voters vote for either Democrats or Republicans.
Okay.
So that has not been one of the things that the parties have really thought has been very important, so that they have nominated people that you then vote in November of every even year for state school board, and none of them really have any experience on locally elected school boards.
Incredible. So, but you've gotten to know many folks over the years, right? Who are very dedicated and who actually bring a lot to the position.
Well, I've since I was elected in 2012 and 13, starting in 2014, I've either attended or watched on video all the state school board meetings. They meet once a month.
My goodness.
For a full day, once a month. And I actually have been going to those meetings, so I have known all the people on the state school board that have been there back, a decade ago, all the way through
Wow.
the people that are on there right now. So they're very familiar with me. Also, the state superintendent, his name is Dr. Michael Rice.
Okay.
So I know him very well, too. And so this is one of the things that I think they need to be looking at, is really improving the strategic plan for the state on education.
Very much so.
It will take, it's not a simple process.
No.
It will take certainly a year, if not multiple years. One of the states that we sort of look at as a benchmark
Right.
is Maryland. Maryland has been working on a strategic plan for many years and really is now in the implementation phase. One of the great things also with a strategic plan, once it's in place, whether you've got Democrats or Republicans in office, they need to still follow that strategic plan.
Oh, that's awesome.
So the idea is not to have things flip back and forth
Yeah,
depending upon
exactly.
who happens to be in office at that time.
Exactly.
But because education, you and I were talking about this earlier, education should not be a political issue.
I completely agree. And it has
It's
been.
needed not only for, as I said at the beginning, not only for the education of our children, but also for economic development, so that we as a state can start attracting people and not, treading water population-wise, but actually
Right.
having economic development and having a larger GDP.
Yeah.
We're not Florida. We're not Texas. We're not Arizona. We've got snow outside.
Yes, we do.
We have ice. We have 4 seasons.
Yes.
We have the Great Lakes, but we need to be able to with everything going on in the auto industry in particular, we've got a revolution going on in the auto industry with electric vehicles and autonomy.
True.
We need to make sure our education system matches the talent that we have in the workforce. And unfortunately, we have been falling down on that.
It's really sad because people deserve those jobs. They have good hearts. They, try in school and everything. But if the overall, in a sense, the system is not effective and is not answering the needs of the market
Absolutely not.
and evolving over time. And it's
So
just,
one of the other things that I'm working with people on the State Board of Education and the state superintendent to try to suggest to them that they need to make a more robust strategic plan. This one was approved in 2020.
okay.
So a strategic plan very often lasts 5 years. So here we are in 2025.
Yeah.
So it's time to really sort of open this up again and redo it. One of the things, though, that I'm also working on is a constitutional amendment
Interesting.
to the Michigan Constitution
Okay.
on education. Our Constitution currently says that we will have a system of free elementary and secondary schools as defined by law.
Okay. That's what it says.
That's what it says.
Okay.
Well, what doesn't that say? Doesn't say anything about students. Doesn't even use the word education. It just says we're going to have a whole bunch of buildings. And it says they're going to be free. So that as a parent, and this has happened over the years, that parents have gone to court and said, Judge, my child's not getting a good education. And the judge sort of looks at them and said, is your child going to school? Yes, Your Honor. Are you paying for that? No, Your Honor. Case dismissed.
No way.
So there's no quality, there's no expectation as to what our children should be, the quality and the what they should be not learning now learning. So it's not up to the Constitution to really get into curriculum and all the details.
Yeah.
But we need to have a Constitution that says we need to have a world-class, high-quality
Right.
education system for all of our 1.4 million children, and possibly even making it so that it's actually a civil right,
That would be wonderful.
so that we have some sort of direction within the Constitution that tells all the elected officials what we want in our education system, that we want to have a world-class system
Absolutely.
that we can compare to other places in the country and in the world, and we want to be amongst the best.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to have that voted on by the people. So not only do we have a world-class, a provision in the Constitution that then, as I said, sends a direction to the elected officials,
Yes.
but also if the elected officials end up not doing it, then we've got the courts.
Yeah.
The courts can then say, hey, elected officials, you're not doing what the people need you to do.
Right.
Go back to the drawing board and really improve the education system.
We don't really have that in
We
our
don't have
courts.
the
No.
If you are a special education parent,
Yeah.
if you have a special education child,
Mm-hmm.
and if you probably know there are things called an IEP, an individual development plan.
Right.
And
Yeah.
if your child is not getting the right kind of education based upon that IEP,
Right.
you can basically go to court. You can get a mediator and get the school district
Wow.
to be accountable for
Right.
that.
Right. Exactly. So
But
the
that's
special.
only about 10% of the children in
Right.
the country. That's a federal law. But for the other 90%, what are
Wow.
called Gen Ed, the general education students, you as a parent have absolutely no recourse. The only thing you can do is elect a different school board member the next time they're up for election. But really, you have no rights as a parent for your child's education. This would allow some sort of recourse and accountability for the system, not necessarily for the individual parent,
Right.
but really to say, hey, this system of education we've got isn't working very well. We need the courts to say, go get better.
Right. Yeah.
And we don't have that right now. All we have is, elections. And as you know, with elections, there are so many issues that, education is not necessarily always the top
Yeah.
issue. So anyway, working on a constitutional amendment.
That is a wonderful idea because then it's over time too. Because as we said, it's a long time horizon.
Absolutely. Well, Constitution, our Constitution was written in 1963. So it's very, once you're in the Constitution, once you have a provision in the Constitution, it's very unlikely that it changes. I mean, it can happen, but it takes a vote of the people to
Okay.
actually put a constitutional amendment into the Constitution of Michigan.
So you're working on that because you know what might be involved and perhaps who to work with, right? 'Cause-
Absolutely. I've worked on a number of constitutional amendments over the last number of years. We, as you know, we have an independent citizens redistricting commission, which eliminated gerrymandering.
Oh, good.
And I worked on that. And also,
That's
we've had a
important.
number of voting rights constitutional amendments in 2018 and 2022.
I'm glad we did.
So those gave you no reason absentee ballots and early voting and a lot of the other things that we've been going through the last election cycle
Yeah.
and learning about. So I was very involved in those. So I know the process as to how constitutional amendments get into place.
Mm-hmm.
What we've not done is ever really had a constitutional amendment on education. So this is what I'm working on.
Do you have to show proof? Do you have to do research and show peer-reviewed journal information for what would back up? Or do you write it and
we would.
Do you have to back it
Number
up?
one, we would write it, but I'm working with other people in other states that
Wow.
want to do the same thing. So we are comparing notes.
Excellent.
We meet regularly and share ideas, not only about the actual wording in the Constitution, but also the process of going through it. Ours, you can do a citizens initiative.
Okay.
Some states actually, or there is no way of doing the citizen having it constitutional amendment. It has to go through the legislature.
Okay.
We have the option, based on our Constitution, to either go through the legislature or through a
Citizens.
citizens initiative where you gather about 500,000 or 600,000 signatures. You've probably seen that, and people sitting at the farmers markets and things like that over the summer and gathering and festivals and gathering signatures. So that's the more likely process, because it's in Michigan. You can go through the legislature, but it has to be bipartisan. You have to get 2/3 of the House and the Senate, and that can be a little daunting sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
But you can with signatures. Either way, if you get the signatures or the legislature, it then goes in the ballot, and then every even year, the people vote for it.
Wow. So you know how like every year, I think in November, there's like elections.
Yep.
Right. So what are some of the elections? Just because I don't know, I'm Canadian, I don't know anything. So I know that there's the presidential election, but what happens on those other years? Just generally.
Well, most of our elections happen in even years, in even year November.
I see.
The presidential election is in 2024 and then in 2028.
2028. Okay.
And in Michigan, we've got gubernatorial election in
Okay.
2026. So we're off cycle
Okay.
there. So that's in the off year. So in 2026, we have gubernatorial elections, the Secretary of State, the Attorney General,
Okay.
and the Michigan Senate. The Michigan House is elected so the Michigan Senate is a 4-year term, as is the governor, but the state legislature or the state House is 2-year term.
Oh.
So every 2 years they have to run for
That's a
election.
lot, isn't it?
Yep. So, but we have the biggest election was 2024 and 2028 for the presidential, but then the off years we have 2026 will be the gubernatorial and the state senate.
Okay.
And then some of the local municipalities, like cities, have it, I think, in like the Mayor Duggan,
Right.
and in the city of Detroit, I
Right.
think he's up for election, or he's not running again, but the mayor of Detroit is 2025. It's this year.
This year.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So it varies.
Yeah, and it's good. I kind of like, when we talked earlier about that it was staggered for the Board of Education folks, that it wasn't this 6 would change. It was 2 would. I really like the
in
thinking
and
of
out.
that. Yeah.
It's complicated because local school boards can either have a 4-year term or a 6-year term.
Oh.
And that's at the discretion of the local school board. So, and their terms, they very often stagger them. So there are 7 people on a local school board.
Right.
If you're on a 4-year term, it's the elections are in November of even years.
Okay.
So if you're in a 4-year term, you've got 4 people, and then 2 years later, it's 3 people.
Right.
But if you've got your school district has a 6-year term,
6-year term.
then you'll have what 2, 2,
Two-
3. So
Yeah,
3,
'cause
4,
it's
5, 6,
7
7. Yep,
altogether.
yep. So 1 year it'll be 2 people, 2 years later it'll be 2 more people, and then 2 years later it'll be 3 people, and then sort of goes through that routine.
Okay. Yeah. So
So each
cool.
those are all based on state law in terms of how all those election processes work.
Have you ever thought about being on the State Board of Education? Because you're definitely qualified.
Well, thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
I have, pardon me, I have not only attended, as I said, the school board meetings,
Yeah, you're very dedicated to
but
that's amazing.
have thrown my hat in 2022 and
Very good.
2024. Unfortunately, I didn't get the nomination from, I'm a Democrat, so I'd be going through the Democratic Party, and they have put other people on the ballot. So in 2022, the 2 other Democrats, or the 2 Democrats that were not me, won.
Okay.
In 2024, as I said, I went for the nomination, did not get it, but a fellow that I'm working with on this constitutional amendment, his name is Adam Zemke, was actually on the ballot
Wow.
along with another gentleman. His name is Ted Jones.
Okay.
And they were on the ballot. They did not win election. They, the two Republicans won. They were incumbents.
Okay.
So they had just come off of an 8-year term, and they got reelected to another 8-year term. So
Oh, my
they will be
goodness.
in office from 2025 through 2032.
That's a long time.
Yep.
But you might try again in 2026, do you think?
I will
Think
very likely try again, depending on how the political winds are. But as I said, I'm going to continue to work with the people on the State Board of Education. Currently, the State Board is 6 Democrats, 2 Republicans.
Wow.
So I will be continuing to work with them on the more robust strategic plan that I talked about, because I think that's the
We need
way.
that.
That's the way to really get all of the different organizations that we have in the state to try to be, coordinated. You look at if a big corporation,
Right.
which, like a General Motors or a Ford, if every plant and every person kind of did their own thing,
Oh, my God.
it really wouldn't work very well.
Nothing would-
They go to business in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But that's sort of where our education system works organizationally. And you were mentioning before we went on the air, teachers. And absolutely, everything I've been talking about, I am not an educator. I actually, have never, I've taught some classes myself in work, but I've never actually been in a classroom with children. But it really takes both types of people
Right.
in an education system.
Right.
I don't know the pedagogy. I don't know how to teach a child.
Right.
But I do
But you understand
can
the
see
business
the
of it.
structure, the
Yep.
business, the organization,
And that's so
as to
important.
how an organization should work. And it really takes both types
It does.
of people. You need, just like when you have a corporation and you have like an inventor who knows the business or the product, but you also need sort of a business person to sort
Right.
of know how the finances work and what buildings what kind of construction we need to do and how to do bonds
Right.
and really how
It's a
how to
lot.
do lobbying and all the different things that are not just teaching a child in school in
Exactly.
the classroom.
Exactly.
It really takes a team of both those type of people. So a person that knows the product, and the child is
Right.
the product of what we're trying to do.
Right.
But it also needs a person who's got the organizational skills and ability.
Right.
And that's what I bring to the party.
It's a
so
massive-
working in conjunction with having that team approach is really what is needed.
And the superintendent, can that person be a teacher that just sort of, evolves to that level?
Mostly they
often
are.
teachers?
Very often, a superintendent has gone from actually in the classroom and has decided to take the administrative route.
Wow.
And gone from a teacher to a principal,
Principal.
to what's called central office, which are the
Okay.
people in the staff departments, like head of learning services or be a finance person or something, and then eventually get to a superintendency.
Wow. But it's nice because they have the background of okay, they can think of the child too in the whole equation,
Absolutely.
right?
Because our business, what we're here to do is educate children. So you really, yes, not all superintendents come from the classroom, but I would say the vast majority do. And that's really the responsibility of the school board that you elect to decide who, local school board has a lot of responsibilities, but one of them is to evaluate or to hire, evaluate, and give goals to the superintendent. One of the things I say to people is the difference between a school board and a superintendent.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that.
A school board says what, and the superintendent says how.
Oh my gosh.
So school board members come from the community, whether local school board or state school board,
Okay.
and they're to set the goals for the organization.
Right.
They're to say they're the visionaries, and then they give those goals to the superintendent to say, sort of like Star Trek, make it so.
Make it so, right?
So
Picard.
we have set these goals. Now it needs to be a collaborative effort because you don't want to set goals that are so
Yeah,
so
yeah.
difficult that are impossible to achieve.
Yeah.
But what I say is that you want to set goals that are aggressive but achievable.
I like that.
You don't want to make the chinning bar so low that it's a no-brainer,
Yeah.
but you don't want to make it so high that everyone said, I'll never, that's ridiculous.
I know.
But you want to make it so that, say, other districts, other places in the country and the world have done that, but it's a long way for us, but, we should be able to do that because other people have done it.
Yeah.
But I don't know how right now, but let me go back and I'll try to figure that out. That's the way the goals should be set.
That's amazing.
And that's up to the school board, whether it's at the local level for your local district or for the whole state. That's really the responsibility of the elected officials on the school board, is to set those visionary goals
Wow.
with a vision and the goals that support that vision and the metrics that then use to measure those.
Right.
And then let the superintendent, whether it's the state superintendent or the local superintendent, go back and work with their cabinet and their teachers and their principals and come up with the strategies as to how we can achieve those very lofty goals that the school board has set for us.
So teachers can have a voice.
Absolutely.
I'm happy.
They must have.
I'm so glad to hear that. That's great because they are in there in the trenches every day, right?
Absolutely.
And teaching is not as it's a different situation than when we went to school, when our parents went to school. It's a whole different world, right?
Well, not only is it a different world, but also, we have all of these devices now.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we do. That's a whole other.
What you want, the education is evolving from just learning reading, writing, arithmetic
Right.
to what are called the 4 C's: collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and creativity.
Wow.
So really giving the students the tools that they know. We have no idea what a 25-year-old is going to be doing, 5 years after or 6 or 7 years after they graduated. We don't know. So what we need to do is we need to give them the tools
Right.
and the ability to think for themselves and be able to work in a workplace and be a good citizen.
Yeah, that's very true. That's
to
very
come
true.
up with, in one of the things in our constitutional amendment that we want to
you were
do
writing.
here
Uh-huh.
is, where is it?
Sure.
Here it is. To meaningfully participate in the economy, our democracy, and society.
Oh, that's
So
lovely.
giving them the tools they need to be successful adults. So it's not just book learning these
Right.
days.
No, you're right.
Like it used to be. So that's one of the things that we need to do. And not only for that type of thing, but also these days, another big piece has become social emotional learning, being able to interact with other people and
Okay.
be able to,
Very important.
so you look at, the suicide rates and the mental health issues that we've got.
Right.
So education is a very, very complex issue, which
Wow.
is where definitely you need the teachers who really know how to do this, and the social workers and the counselors and the psychologists to be
Right.
able to work with students as human beings,
Very, very
but
much so.
also
Very
being
much
able
so.
to make sure that they have the people in the classroom have the tools
Right.
and the funding to be able to do, and the goals and the objectives, so that they all know where they go and they have where they're going and have
Wow.
the financial resources
Right.
to be able to do what they need to do and be successful.
So our kids deserve it.
Absolutely.
I just love how you've given so much of your life in the service of children and the future, and I'm so very glad you found this pathway, and we appreciate what you've done. And my gosh, we're going to have to launch a campaign here, aren't we? I'm so happy. If you'd like to come back, I would love to have you, Howard. It's
Thank
such
you
a
very
pleasure.
much for the time.
Thank you for teaching all of us, because you don't really know how things work, and you don't really get a chance to ask somebody on a school board like, what do you guys talk about, and how do you come up with decisions? And it's so nice to have the framework of the goals and what Governor Whitmer, in all of it, and then look at other states. What are they doing? Right? So
Well,
there's so
obviously,
much.
parents are concerned with their child.
Right.
This is talking about 1.4 million children.
Unbelievable.
And so instead of just the micro, which parent absolutely has to do with looking at their children and the micro aspect of their children being successful, it's up to the school board at the local level, and the state level, and the superintendents to look at all the children.
all the children. Wow. Well, it's a lovely way to spend your life, isn't it? Thank you
It's
so
my
much,
way
sir.
of giving back.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we can afford you.
And as I tell people, being on a school board, I get paid what I'm worth.
I hope so.
It's a volunteer job.
Zero, no.
It
You're
is.
so modest. What a pleasure. Thank you so much, Howard.
Absolutely,
Please
Sue.
come back and
Thank
talk
you
with
for
us
having me
again.
today.
You're so welcome. Thank you for watching. It's amazing how much we've learned about education and in a micro, but also in the macro, and to really make you think about, what's possible for us. Michigan is a great state with so many good folks who want to do a good job and deserve to have opportunities, but we have to be able to be ready for the opportunities, right? So join us again. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Take care. I don't know if you have Rob's